Final position that we're going to talk about today, and for me, and this isn't really a surprise for anybody, but this is my lowest grade, and we're going to talk about the safety position. And I did have 2 grades written down here, and I had a C plus written down. And again, if you listen to our commentary about the 22 class, it's because they signed one guy, and they needed more numbers.
Sort of. Jaden Bellamy's not even a true safety.
Exactly. He was the guy that if you signed a stud safety, let's say Xavier Watts comes to Notre Dame, now you can talk about Bellamy being a guy that can move over to corner. And, now he has to stay at safety. And I think that hurts the grade a little bit, right? And, last year they signed 2 guys, which is great. They signed G and they signed Walters. Is it Kari or Carey? Because I always mess it up.
I think it's Carey. I've heard both, but I'm just going to go Carey.
Fair enough. I would just go by his last name like I do all my kids in class. G and Walters, they signed those guys. And those good guys, right? I mean, but none of those guys jump off the page to me, because if they did, I feel like they would have gotten playing time this year because there was opportunity. Yeah. There was opportunity.
Well, G was always a guy that was going to need time.
Sure.
I think. But that kind of factors into the grade, though, Vince. It's like none of these guys are like, I mean, maybe not even show up and play your first couple years.
Right.
Really.
And that's with what they've got going at safety, that's a problem right now.
And they didn't sign anybody in 2020. That's the other thing. They didn't sign anybody in 2020. So
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I went C plus, and I felt like that maybe was a little bit generous, to be honest with you. And it's just because I like. Yeah, I like. Oh, absolutely. I like Justin Walters. I like Jaden, but like I don't know if any of those guys are surefire starters.
Right.
Honestly, I probably went too high on the grade here, if I'm being completely honest with you, because number one, numbers short, came up short. You signed 0 people. I mean, and you needed to move a corner and a receiver to safety to solidify your depth chart.
Which those 2 could be the starters moving forward.
Probably should be.
You know what I mean?
Like part of it is they're really athletic and talented. But again, if Notre Dame signs some big time safeties in 2021, you don't need to move those guys, right? So clearly Justin Walters wasn't ready, and clearly Carey G wasn't ready. Carey's a guy that I like, but my question with Carey G is, okay, does he fit what Marcus Freeman does as a safety? That remains a little bit of a question. He was kind of an alley safety to me. Could play some free safety, he's long and rangy, so we'll find out. I think Justin Walters is a good player. Is he a difference maker? No. He's more of kind of like what they have now. I think he's a little bit more athletic than some of the guys they have now, the veterans. But, just more of a do your job, be a good hitter, be in the right place kind of guy, not like a, future star kind of player. And so you don't have a lot of high. I mean, Carey G's got some upside, but not like, wow, that guy's the next Kyle Hamilton kind of thing, or the next. I mean, Alohi Gilman, even. You know what I mean?
Like, yes.
So I look at it and say there's a lot of question marks in this group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Jaden Bellamy ideally is a guy you want as a starter. I think you want him more as a rotation player. And so I don't view it as a group that necessarily fits with the rest of what you're doing. And as far as just the high, there's no impact, like high upside, like at corner, there's some risk there, right? We said, no, these guys are like show up day one, dominates, but Ryan Barnes, I think, could be a stud. Philip Riley could be a really good. Jaden Mickey could be really good. And of course, Benjamin Morrison, I think could be an absolute stud. Linebacker, we talked about. D tackle, Gabriel Rubio, high upside. Defensive end, all those kids have a high upside. Here, I just don't see the same ceilings. G is the only guy that I view as being a high ceiling guy, but he is a really big difference between where he is and where he needs to be to get to that point.
Yeah.
And so that's why this is a big question mark position. And it's why they have got to hit a grand slam home run at safety in 2023. Now, the good news is they've already got a top 150 kid committed, and they're in a great position with 2 other top kids, Peyton Bowen. I think they're in even better shape in, but then Caleb Downs. There's a couple other safeties that are still on. They're gonna be better in next year's class. I mean, Adon Schuler has already graded out higher than any of the safeties that we're talking about. As a junior in high school, he's already graded out higher than Jaden Bellamy, Kerry G, and Justin Walters. Now, part of that's unfair to Justin because this is also factors in. Justin didn't get to play his senior year because of COVID.
Right.
So he may have taken a jump because I heard he was a little banged up this year too. That's partly why he didn't play. Because remember, he had a really good spring. He really flashed in the spring. But we didn't get a chance to see Justin as a senior because of COVID. And he didn't have it, but the state didn't play. They didn't play fall football in 2020. So that's the other thing too, is we didn't get to see what Justin could be. So he's a bit of a question mark still to me. Because again, we can't really look how good he was as a freshman at Notre Dame. Okay, that gives me excitement about maybe what he could be as we're just talking about the team. But when we look at it from a recruiting standpoint, we have to evaluate what they were as recruits. And Justin was a bit of an unknown because we only got to see him play as a sophomore and as a junior. We didn't get to see him play as a senior. So there's a lot of question marks about this position. The good news, Vince, if you have a great front seven, you can get by with not having great safeties.
Absolutely.
But it does make recruiting 2023, that position becomes, to me, arguably the most important position on the team outside of quarterback in the 2023 class.
Well, and it was an interesting strategy by Notre Dame to not give up on the class of 22 down the stretch, but to focus more on the 23 class.
Right. Other than Nwapa, right.
Right. But you know what I mean?
They weren't going to get for a long time. Right.
Exactly. And it felt like, okay, well, we're going to kind of throw in the towel on 22, but we're going to knock it out of the park in 23. Now they have to. And I think part of that might be because of the rising factor of Watts and Henderson, right?
And how they're impacted by the COVID year. Again, because of the COVID year.
That's a really good point.
They are technically freshmen.
Yeah.
And so, again, if we were going to get super technical with basically what guys are eligibility-wise, this 2-year grade would be Kerry G, Justin Walters, Xavier Watts, Ramon Henderson, and Jaden Bellamy. Different grade then. Now, Ramon, we would have some question marks because we don't know what kind of safety he would have been. But Xavier Watts, if they recruited Xavier Watts to play safety, we would have graded him as a 4-star player.
Yes.
There's no question.
Yes, no question about that. So very interesting. And so, again, they are putting a lot of pressure on the 23 class. They just are. And as you mentioned, they're doing a good job of it so far, but we're a year away from getting those guys inked. So, a lot can happen between now and then. I like where they're at, but they're putting a lot of pressure on that safety class in 23. So we're just going to kind of have to see where that trends and where that goes.